Caesar snapped. He ordered Cato arrested. He had the authority to do.
We're back again with another historical reaction.
Summer of the year
This time,
Julius Caesar approaching
historial civilis. I've always been wanting to react to this guy. I was looking at this guy's YouTube channel. I've actually had suggestions on his videos to react to. And I noticed that he talks about a lot of stuff that I want to learn. I need to learn Roman history.
his term as governor
So,
of Hispania Ulterior.
Julius Caesar chronological order. Let's get
He
it,
spent
man.
his time campaigning against the hill people of northern Spain, and for his efforts had been awarded a triumph by the Senate. This was a great honor, but Caesar had even higher ambitions. It took some arm twisting, but he was able to secure a special dispensation from the Senate, allowing him to run for consul 2 years before he was technically old enough to run. This was, strictly speaking, against the rules, but more and more common in the late Republic.
Wait a minute. Wasn't this the guy who first started the Roman Empire, right? Caesar was the one who started the Roman Empire, right? I'm pretty sure it was him.
So here's Caesar, sitting outside the city of Rome, waiting for the Senate to decide on the date for his triumph. This is when the conservative bloc in the Senate threw a curveball. They lobbied successfully for Caesar's triumph to be pushed back until after the deadline to announce your candidacy for consul. Why does this matter? Because triumphs were for active generals, and active generals were forbidden from entering the city. And if you couldn't enter the city, you couldn't run for consul. Why did they do this? Basically because Caesar was a radical reformer and they didn't like his stupid face. Caesar sent a letter to the Senate being like, okay, it looks like you guys made a scheduling mistake. But here's the thing, everybody knew that he intended to run. Why do you think he got that special dispensation to run early? He had been openly preparing for this campaign. He had actually left early just so he could be back before the deadline. If they had a problem with him running, they shouldn't have given him the dispensation to run early. But if this was simply a scheduling mistake, Caesar was open to working it out. He suggested, how about you just let me declare my candidacy in absentia? The Senate heard his request and harumphed many harumphs. Such a thing just wasn't done, and they had already gone out of their way to bend the rules for Caesar. The conservatives, led by...
Wait, how old was Caesar? How old was he when this was happening?
By a senator named Cato, had a field day with this. Cato filibustered, meaning that he spoke and spoke until the Senate was forced to adjourn for the day. No decision was taken on Caesar's request. Okay, message received. Obviously this wasn't a mistake. This was sabotage. Coincidentally, Cato's son-in-law, Bibulus, was running for consul as well.
What type of name is a Bibulus?
Okay.
Bibulus, what that? That's the first time I've heard something like that.
More sense. In response to this, Caesar did something insane. He renounced his command. By doing this, he also renounced his triumph, which I cannot stress enough was an unthinkable thing for a politician to do. But by doing this, he gained access to the city.
Ooh, let him cook. Let him cook. Yeah, my voice hurts so much. Like, oh my gosh, I can't say what I want to say too much because my voice hurts. But let him cook, bro.
People watched astonished as he marched right down to the forum and officially declared his candidacy for consul. Caesar already had a strategy in place. He had arranged to run on a joint ticket with a man called Lucius. Since there were two consuls, this was sometimes done, but it was the exception rather than the norm. Caesar was a young and popular politician running as a reformer. Lucius was a wealthy, more moderate senator with no name recognition or, let's be honest, charisma. Lucius financed the campaign and paid the bribes, while Caesar made the speeches and rallied the people. Unlike Caesar, Lucius was by no means a radical. He was a close friend to Cicero, an extremely influential, slightly conservative...
I've heard of Cicero. Bro, this is the thing about Roman history, bro. Like, I've heard of these names, Caesar, Cicero, but I don't know too much about it, man. That's why I'm just like taking in all the information. I'm like, okay. Interesting. I need to learn more about Cicero, though. There's a lot about Rome that I really need to freaking learn about, bro.
Ultimately pragmatic senator. Caesar was desperately seeking Cicero's support, not only for this campaign, but for the year to come. In this respect, Lucius served not only as a piggy bank, but also as an olive branch to the more moderate senators. As the campaign was drawing to a close, it began to dawn on the conservatives that Caesar was the clear frontrunner. Before every consular election, the Senate decided where the next two consuls would serve as governors after their term was up. This was done before the election, so the winners weren't subjected to any political shenanigans. Since the conservatives couldn't do anything about the fact that Caesar looked like he was going to win this thing, they decided to hijack this process. They started to make a big stink in the Senate about the physical degradation of rural Italy. This was kinda true, so they got some support from their fellow senators. As a solution, they proposed that instead of assigning a province to the next consuls, they should instead spend their time restoring the woodland and country lanes of Italy. Incredibly, the Senate fell for this. The motion passed. To many outside observers, including Caesar, this was another act of sabotage. But Caesar was powerless to do anything about it. Yet. When election day rolled around, everyone kind of figured that Caesar was going to win. The real question became who else would serve as consul. It was a race for second place between Bibulus, Cato's conservative son-in-law, and Lucius, Caesar's uncharismatic ally. In the end, Bibulus won. This must have come as a surprise to Caesar, since the plan was for poor old Lucius to ride in on his coattails. Meanwhile, it was a huge coup for the hardline conservatives.
Wait, but why would he want him? Why would he want him? Why not Bibulus? Why? What's wrong with Bibulus?
Bibulus had planned to put a halt on all new reforms during his term. It was going to be an interesting year.
Is that why?
The election for consul took place in July, and incoming consuls didn't actually...
But what was so good about Lucius, or whatever his name was?
...take power until January 1st. So Caesar had a ton of time to prepare, and he did. Now this hasn't come up yet, but it's important to know. Caesar was in a secret alliance with two other senators, Pompey and Crassus. This is known by historians as the First Triumvirate. As consuls, Pompey and Crassus had a terrible time getting any significant legislation past the conservative bloc in the Senate. They each
Bro. That's how a democracy should be, bro. That's how a freaking democracy should be. Like, it should be difficult, regardless of if you make like secret alliances or whatnot. It should be difficult to like get things done somewhat, you know? Like American democracy, I always hear, it's modeled after the Romans, it's modeled after the Greek, yada, yada, yada. Bro, American democracy sucks, okay? This that I'm listening to, this doesn't even remind me nothing of American freaking democracy, man. Democracy, like, freaking two-party system. Oh my gosh, dude. And democracy is so bad to the point where freaking... like, a lot of people here don't even care about it, right? All right, let's continue.
Making promises to their supporters, but neither was able to deliver. Pompey had come back from the east, a conquering hero, and had promised to set up colonies for tens of thousands of veterans in the newly conquered territory. This was expensive, and he couldn't get a bill through the Senate.
Colonies are very expensive.
Tax collectors, which, as you can imagine, was pretty unpopular. It didn't help matters that on top of this, there was a personal animosity between the two. As a remedy, these two men secretly backed this young populace named Julius Caesar. If Caesar could pass these bills for them, they promised to back the rest of his legislative agenda. The group also agreed to pull any bill if one of the three found it objectionable. January 1st of 59 BCE rolled around, and Caesar and Bibulus began their term. It was customary for the consul who got the most votes in the election to take the lead during the first month, with the second place consul taking the lead during the second month, swapping back and forth for the entire year. This act of taking the lead was called holding fasces. Caesar held fasces first. He immediately ordered scribes to take down all Senate business and to post it outside in the forum for the public to read. Forever the populist, Caesar knew that he had the people on his side and wanted to increase public pressure on some of his more conservative colleagues. His next move, and we're still talking about the first day of his term, was to put forward an ambitious land reform bill. Let's go into detail on this. At this time, radical land redistribution had been a goal of reformers for over 70 years. Over the last century, Italy's agricultural sector had been hollowed out. The huge influx of slaves and wealth meant that small landowners were being bought up by huge mega plantations, with hordes of slaves doing the actual work. This had
freaking funny how nobody talks about this at all. I don't hear people calling for reparations about this, bro. Freaking, I know that there's like calls for reparations, like a lot of people, cause I'm from the Caribbean, and if you're from like North America, you probably have heard of people calling for reparations about slavery a lot. Personally, I have mixed feelings about that. All right, guys. So Patreon page is finally up and running. The link will be in the description. I've been saying that I need a Patreon for the longest time because there's stuff that I can't post on YouTube. Some of my videos that I post sometimes get copyrighted and I have to just take them down. So, I'm probably going to be posting a lot of those type of videos on here. These are the tier lists that you can read for yourselves. And, if you want to support me or whatnot, you want to connect with me more, have like much more detailed chats, you can read them, So guys, check out the Patreon. There is some actual very, very potentially valuable stuff that you would probably like on here, especially when it comes to suggestions and whatnot. You can read it on here. If you don't want to donate to me, that is completely okay. Like I said, if you want to do it, you want to do it. If you want to support me, especially with what's been going on with me, that would be nice. But yeah, guys, this is my Patreon. Finally, after me finally saying that I'm gonna get a Patreon, it's finally here. So yeah, continue watching my video, and I'm glad you're in. In my personal opinion, I feel like everyone deserves reparations. If they can somewhat prove that they were affected by slavery. But it's so moronic how I hear people always talk about slavery that happened during the transatlantic slave trade, but I don't really hear them talking about freaking slavery that happened during the Roman times. And a lot of these countries and people, they like to freaking kiss up the Roman Empire. They like to respect the Roman Empire. I'm like, bro, what? Oh my gosh, dude. The intellectual insult. That is such an intellectual freaking insult, man. Let's continue.
Poor farmers into the cities. These urban poor were now eligible for heavily subsidized bread, so this was a huge drain on the public coffers. Over the decades, these mega plantations neglected their land, and much of it was just sitting there uncultivated. Domestic grain production dropped, while its demand continued to rise. This was a recipe for economic disaster, and the reformers had taken up the cause for generations, with some limited success. Caesar's first bill, on his first day, was meant to address this. He proposed that they set up a land commission, responsible for buying up land from willing mega plantations and redistributing it to the urban poor.
Mega plantation is crazy.
The expectation was that this would allow for thousands of urban poor to leave the city and set up small, profitable farms on previously unproductive land.
Bro, okay, this is the problem with cities. And this is kind of scares me. Dude, cities are literally completely at the mercy of farms, bro. A lot of people don't really think about this, but we see all these nice cities, we see all of these nice buildings and whatnot, and we could go to the supermarket just fine. And this is why I'm scared, if a crisis happens, if a war happens, right? Or if the sun shoots out one of its a solar storm. If a solar storm happens and the earth does get hit by solar waves and it completely or EMP wave, if something like that happens, sun shoots that at us, our electricity is gone, bro. We're useless in the city. We're useless, bro. We're freaking useless, bro. That has always been a genuine fear, because bro, if you're living on a farm, bro, you're set. You're basically set, because farms are the ones who supply the cities, but most people go to the cities. But again, farms are the ones who supply the cities. So if a crisis happens, guess what? You're set for the time being. Everyone else in the city is not, right? All right, let's continue. It's just some that thought just came up in my head, because a lot of people don't seem to realize just how really dependent on farms we still are. People think we're this super duper modernized thing. I mean, yeah, we are modernized, but guys, at the end of the day, we're still dependent on farming. Just like how back then these people were dependent on farms, we're still dependent on farms, right? Junk food, all of that stuff, guys. It has to come from somewhere, right? All right, let's continue.
In order to maximize the number of people affected, applicants were required to be married men with 3 or more kids.
3 or more?
Friendly
Wow.
gesture to Pompey, veterans were also allowed to apply. These new farmers were forbidden from selling their land for 20 years in order to prevent the mega plantations from just going around and buying it all up again. Many senators were concerned with the cost of this plan. As a concession to them,
doesn't sound bad though.
In central Italy called Campania to be exempted from the bill, since much of the land here was actually owned by the government and provided a steady source of income. The land commission was to be made up of 20 prominent Romans, appointed by the consul, who would then be responsible for the land purchases.
Okay.
Some senators raised objections. Caesar added a line to the bill that barred himself from serving as a commissioner. The thing is, before the public assembly could approve any bill, it had to be posted publicly for 24 days. Normally this wouldn't really matter, but Caesar had to hold fasces when the law went into effect. He needed the 20 men on the commission to be answerable to him. If the law went into effect when Bibulus held fasces, he could just stack the commission with a bunch of guys that would just reject every land sale. Caesar only had a few days to get this bill through the Senate.
Freaking hell, dude, this is actually kind of crazy, bro. But hey, that's how it's like in freaking politics. But damn, let's see what Caesar does, bro.
If you want to get it passed by the public assembly before February. After the initial compromises were made, Caesar painstakingly went line by line and read the entire bill in front of the Senate, stopping after every sentence and asking if there were objections. There were none. After he was done, debate opened up.
Okay.
Cato rose to comment. He spoke about how it was a very fine bill, but this year was just a bad time to do any major land reform. And then he kept talking, and kept talking. The dude was filibustering the bill. Caesar was beside himself. He had held the Senate's hand through this entire process, made compromises left and right, and yet Cato was still trying to torpedo this bill for no specific reason. Caesar snapped. He ordered Cato arrested. He had the authority to do this as consul, but the Senate...
What? You just ordered him arrested? What? For what? He's just talking. Come on, let the man speak. I don't think there was like freedom of speech in the Roman Republic. This is the Roman Republic, right? Yeah, I think this is the Roman Republic era. But you just order him to be arrested? What in the world?
It erupted into chaos. A bunch of senators stormed out, with one telling Caesar to his face that he'd rather be in prison with Cato than in the Senate with Caesar. The whole major misstep. Not only did Caesar
you messed up, bro,
by trampling on its prerogatives, but he gave ammunition to his enemies. This is when they started to call him a tyrant. Caesar backed down. He released Cato and adjourned the Senate for the day. It was obvious that Cato and his conservatives weren't going to play nice, so Caesar had to think creatively. He took to the streets. He posted the full text of the land bill in the forum for anybody to read, and simply proclaimed that the public assembly would vote in 24 days. He then went around and started to make a series of speeches promoting the bill to the public. The Senate never passed the bill. Caesar just decided to skip a step. Due to a quirk in the Roman constitution, this wasn't technically against the law, but it just wasn't done. Pompey and...
Bro, constitution. Bro, that's the problem with having the constitution, bro. Because I'm not saying like, oh, we should stop having constitutions and whatnot, but like, how do I explain this? A lot of constitutions, bro, they have like so many loopholes that a lot of people put there on purpose, right? A lot of people, like the Jamaican constitution, bro. The reason why Jamaica is like really bad today is because of its constitution. It's the murder capital of the Western Hemisphere. Actually, I think it's the murder capital of the world. Freaking hell. But the Jamaican constitution has too much power to the prime minister. Way too much power to the prime minister, bro. And a lot of countries' constitution is like this. Like, I don't know, man. I know Britain doesn't even have a constitution, and they're doing fine. Britain doesn't have a constitution. They're doing great, right? Freaking, I don't know. Constitutions can be a double-edged sword, and a lot of people don't really realize, like, if you're an average person, bro, who doesn't care about this type of stuff, bro, and you know your country's making a constitution and whatnot, bro, that could affect your life and you don't even know it, man. Like, let's continue.
Crassus surprised everybody by vocally supporting what Caesar was doing, which added some legitimacy to the whole thing. Caesar even invited Bibulus to come and debate the merits of the bill before the public. He came, but the crowd was so whipped up that he was booed off the stage before he even got a chance to speak.
Wow.
At the end of the 24 days, the public assembly to vote on the bill. Before the vote, a large conservative delegation arrived, led by Bibulus and Cato, and followed by all of the conservative tribunes of the plebs and a bunch of lesser senators. The inclusion of the tribunes was significant, because both they and the consuls had the power to veto the proceedings. They had come to do just that. Upon their arrival, the crowd flew into a frenzy. Bibulus was making his way towards the speaking platform when the crowd attacked him. His bodyguards were overpowered, and he was pulled into the crowd. Bibulus legitimately thought that he was about to be killed. Instead, the crowd dumped feces on his head.
Oh, nah. Oh, dude, that's so disgusting. That is so disgusting. Bro, what? And not only that, but dude, you can get an infection from that. Dude, you can literally get an infection from that and die. Like, I remember I heard a story of a freaking homeless man who just went up to a woman and just dumped a pile of feces, like he says. I'm not gonna say, like, a bad word, because this is page A channel. No, but seriously, like, I knew a homeless guy who freaking did that. And the woman had to get rushed to the hospital because there was a potential that she could have gotten the infection from that. Because it's feces, dude. It has so much germs on it. Oh, dude.
The conservatives were absolutely distraught over what they saw and fled for their own safety. Once they were gone, a vote was called and the land reform bill passed with a huge majority. Now, Bibulus would later claim that during this incident, he was exercising his veto the entire time, making the entire vote illegal. Caesar would claim that the roar of the crowd was so loud that nobody could hear what anybody was saying. You can decide for yourself who you believe.
I believe both sides.
Caesar finally...
I believe both sides. I feel like Caesar purposely like used the, like, I feel like Caesar knew that he would veto it, but he just was like, oh, the crowd is so loud that I didn't hear anything. Like, but I do believe both sides. The crowd probably was loud. He was probably trying to veto it. Yeah. So let's continue.
He got to appoint his commissioners, and oh, look at that, top of the list, Pompey and Crassus.
Oh, wow. Such a shocker.
Bibulus held fasces. His first act was to call for a meeting of the Senate to officially condemn Caesar for his use of mob violence. At a minimum, he wanted the vote overturned, and there was even talk of stripping Caesar of his consulship. The speaking order in the Senate always went in order of prestige, and in this case the order turned out to be very significant. Bibulus held fasces, so he got to speak first. As the other sitting consul, Caesar spoke second, in his own defense. Then, consuls from the previous years got to speak, two of whom happened to be Pompey and Crassus. They both supported Caesar's actions and said that the vote was legal. This really got people's attention. Not only did Caesar have control over the mob, but he seemed to have the support of some of Rome's most powerful senators too.
Wow, Caesar is a genius, bro.
Criticizing Caesar. Bibulus's proposal.
Caesar is actually a genius, bro.
After this incident, Bibulus retreated to his home and basically did not appear again publicly for the rest of his term. In the absence of his colleague, Caesar unexpectedly held fasces again, and as a cherry on top, the Senate was now... He had his big signature piece of legislation in place, so he started paying back his allies. The first order of business was to ratify Pompey's conquests in the east. See, Pompey had conquered an incredible amount of territory in the east, adding 4 new provinces to Rome. He also set up new protectorates and negotiated new alliances. Upon his return, the Senate saw fit to award him with a triumph, but didn't bother ratifying his...
I thought that Rome wasn't really conquering the east until it became an empire. I didn't know they were already like in the east, like after it was an empire.
Conquest treaties. Even when Pompey himself was consul, he couldn't get his own conquests recognized by the Senate, which only shows you how broken this system was during this period. Caesar was able to get this squared away with minimal opposition, much to Pompey's delight. Caesar also had to pay Crassus back for his support. Crassus had been supported by the tax collectors, who had gotten themselves into a bit of a bind. Rome didn't administer its own tax collection, but contracted it out to private companies who bid on how much tax they would be able to collect. Well, in the East, some of the tax collectors found themselves unable to meet their own bids, like by a lot. This was partially due to the fact that Pompey had spent years destroying commerce by conquering everything in sight, and partially due to the fact that the tax collectors just screwed up and overbid. Caesar lowered the amount of tax due by 1/3, and everybody walked away from the whole thing grumbling, but the problem was solved. Another weird piece of old business that Caesar wanted to clear up had to do with Egypt. The previous ruler, Ptolemy XI, having no legitimate heirs, left his kingdom to the Roman Republic in his will. After his death, Ptolemy XII...
Really? Wait, that's how Rome got Egypt? Wow. Really? Wow.
An illegitimate heir, assumed the throne, and Rome never bothered to press its claim. Finally, in Caesar's year, Ptolemy actually traveled to Rome to lobby for official recognition as the true ruler of Egypt. Apparently, Ptolemy paid Caesar and Pompey a king's ransom in bribes. Caesar asked that the Senate officially recognize Ptolemy's claim, and threw an alliance with Egypt in there for good measure. The Senate agreed, and the whole thing was taken care of. During this period,
so they didn't take Egypt. Okay.
Still housebound, would not stay quiet. Consuls had the power to decide when...
Wait, but why would they not want to take Egypt? Why would they not want to take Egypt? That's very, very... Someone answered that. Why wouldn't Rome not take Egypt, despite the fact that they had an actual claim to it? Why would they not do that?
When certain festivals and religious holidays were going to happen, and Bibulus was being a nuisance by putting them all on days when Caesar had votes scheduled. Technically, this should have made all of these votes illegal, but Caesar also happened to be Rome's head priest, and he seemed to think it was all okay. The people were quite content to just go along with this because they saw Bibulus as a laughingstock. Meanwhile, in the Senate, Caesar was able to get the money to resettle Pompey's veterans in the East, fulfilling his final legislative obligation to his fellow triumvirs. During the debate for this bill, one ex-consul named Lucullus spoke in opposition. When Caesar pushed back and lightly hinted that maybe it was time to start looking into old corruption charges, Lucullus threw himself on the ground and groveled at Caesar's feet like a slave. Right there on the floor of the Senate in front of everybody. This was an ex-consul. It was shocking. You may, or may not, remember all the way back to before Caesar was consul, when the conservatives decided that he was needed to protect the woodland and country lanes of Italy after his term. Well, Caesar hadn't forgotten. Serving as governor after your term as consul was a huge perk, and Caesar wanted to make the most of it. One of Caesar's allies put forward a bill to give him the command of Illyricum, which was on the Adriatic Sea, and Cisalpine Gaul, which was in northern Italy, 2 provinces. This was for a 5-year command, which was longer than normal. He was also given the privilege of picking his own legates, which was usually something the Senate did. Just as this bill was going through, word...
Bro, this is like... This video, bro. I think this is like the first reaction video where I'm just like... Bro, usually I have so much to say, but there's so much to freaking learn that I can't even like say anything. The best I can do is just ask a question. I can't even give input because like he's just giving us so much of his own input and so much details. I'm just like, okay. Okay. Wow. Okay.
Came in that the governor of Transalpine Gaul had unexpectedly died. This province was just added to the mix, and by the end, the Senate had awarded Caesar 3 provinces and a total of 4 legions. By any conventional standard,
wow.
This was overkill.
Yeah,
Nobody got 3 provinces. I'm sure
even I know that. I don't know much Roman history.
Politics would slowly return to normal, and if they needed to give him 3 provinces to convince him to leave, that was fine. It was around this time that Caesar proposed his second land reform bill, only a few months after the first one had gone into effect. We simply do not have enough information on Caesar's motives for this. Either Caesar felt emboldened by his newfound monopoly on power, or he felt that his first land reform bill wasn't as effective.
I'm glad that he actually like admitted that, hey guys, I don't have much information to talk about this because there's a lot of history channels that talk a whole bunch of yapping, and a lot of it isn't even like confirmed, like solid information. A lot of it is just speculation, and they don't admit this. And I see so many people go listen to it, and they just freaking, like freaking hell, dude. They just they just take it in. They don't question it. They don't do anything. A big problem that a lot of these so-called history channels have, bro. I have to make a video on that, bro, because I see so many history channels that are just not too good. Let's continue.
Honestly, I don't know. But with this second bill, he turned his sights...
At least he admits that he doesn't know.
...owned land that was explicitly exempted from the first law. There was enough land in Campania for 20,000 small family farms, and since Rome already owned the land, the bill could be implemented immediately, but it faced some fierce opposition in the Senate. Cicero in particular was a vocal opponent, saying that the loss of Campania would be too much for the Roman treasury to take. Caesar tried to bribe Cicero by promising to name him as one of his legates next year, but Cicero refused. In the end, many lesser senators were themselves intimidated or bribed, and the bill was able to squeak through without the support of men like Cicero. For his next legislative undertaking,
what Caesar did.
Caesar tackled one of his pet projects, and again, it didn't make him any friends in the Senate. For the majority of Caesar's adult life, he had been fascinated with how Roman provinces were governed, and he had some serious proposals for reform. A lot of proposals, actually. He dropped on the Senate's doorstep a bill with over 100 separate chapters, covering everything from administration to tax collection to restrictions on bribery to rules on balancing provincial budgets. It had everything. The conservative bloc in the Senate had devoted their careers to crusading against corruption, so they had a really hard time criticizing this bill. And, by the way, everybody agreed that these reforms were badly needed. The conservatives hated Caesar's guts, but they couldn't find any way to block this bill without looking like complete hypocrites. It passed easily, and these reforms remained in place relatively unchanged for centuries. We are approaching the end of Caesar's term as consul, but at some point in the autumn something weird happened. We can't say with certainty what happened, but we have rumors. Listen to some of these stories and let's see if a pattern emerges. The first version we hear is this. A man named Vettius came before the Senate and claimed that a senator named Curio, one of Caesar's chief opponents, planned to murder Pompey. Another version, Vettius said that Curio planned to murder Pompey and Caesar. Another version, Vettius said that Curio and a man named Brutus, maybe you've heard of him, planned to murder Pompey and Caesar. Another version, Vettius said that Curio and Brutus and Bibulus planned to murder Pompey and Caesar.
Bro, how many versions do this have? I'm sitting here just processing this information like, okay. And he's just going on and on and on and on. I'm like, okay. I'm more and more and more and more. I'm like, okay. Jeez, man. Bloody hell, man.
Other version. Vettius said that Curio and Brutus and Bibulus and Cicero's son-in-law planned to murder Pompey and Caesar. Another version. Vettius said that Curio and
Okay, this is funny. This is funny at this point.
And Lucullus, that guy who had fallen before Caesar and begged like a slave, planned to murder Pompey and Caesar.
Is there another version?
You get the idea. It looks like it started off as one rumor that may or may not have been true and conveniently ballooned until it touched almost every one of Caesar's political enemies. Get out your tinfoil hats because there's one more detail we know. The next day, Vettius was found dead. October rolled around, and Caesar oversaw the selection of his successors. Bibulus inexplicably kept on pushing back the election date. The reformers ran their candidates, the conservatives ran their candidates, and in the end, the winners were Caesar's father-in-law and one of Pompey's old legates. 2 reformers and 2 allies of Caesar. His legacy was now secure. Consuls officially handed over power on January 1st, and it was customary for them to give a farewell speech at the end of the year. Caesar gave his speech, it was normal, whatever, history doesn't remember it. Then, to everybody's surprise, there was Bibulus.
History doesn't remember it, wow.
Hadn't been seen all year, and suddenly he wanted to deliver a speech. As he approached the speaking platform, a tribune of the plebs stepped forward. This tribune basically owed his entire career to Caesar. He invoked his veto, stopping Bibulus from giving his farewell speech, and stripping the poor man of his last shred of dignity.
Wow, disrespectful. Nah, I actually feel bad. Oh, dude. That is so bro, me personally, nigga. Oh, heck, nah. I said bad word. I'm black, so it doesn't really matter. But me personally, bro. I would lunge on that guy. You see what he did right here? Me personally, bro, yeah, it's on site. It's on site, bro. Bro, even if I got like a dagger or something, yep. I'm just gonna lunge at him. Heck no. That is actually one of the no. I think this is the most disrespectful thing that I've ever reacted to. I've reacted to a few disrespectful things on these channels in history. So no, that's oh heck nah, bro. Heck nah. Let's continue.
Caesar couldn't have asked for a better gift on his last day as consul.
That's the end? Freaking hell, man. Yeah, I'm gonna react to all of this. This guy's channel has a bunch of stuff that actually seems really good to react to. He seems like he knows what he's talking about, which is really good too. I've been looking for another YouTube channel that's similar to Epic History TV and somewhat in it that they're popular, they're reliable in their sources. And, you know, they're not just like a random pop history. You know, they focus on, you know, pop history stuff like World War One, World War Two. Yeah, I'm definitely going to react to this guy a lot more in chronological order because I saw some of his videos and playlists. So thank you for watching. Check out my Patreon, link in the description or on the end screen that's appearing right now. If you like my reactions, check out my other reactions. If you have any suggestions, like any Roman suggestions, make sure that you go and suggest it to me in the comments down below. So, like I said, y'all, thank you for watching and goodbye.